What if the future of artificial intelligence wasn't built in secret labs, but in crowded conference halls, late night meetups, and conversations between people trying to figure it out in real time? And what if everything you've been told about AI replacing humans misses the story entirely? Because long before ChatGPT went viral and before AI became a buzzword, there were people quietly shaping how this technology would actually enter the world. It was bridging a gap between theory and practice and between hype and reality. Today's guest has been at the center of that shift for over a decade. Sheamus McGovern is the founder of Open Data Science Conference, ODSC AI, one of the world's leading global AI platforms. He's worked at the intersection of data science, finance, venture capital, and real world AI adoption, helping more than 120,000 professionals navigate one of the fastest technological transformations in history. In this episode, we're going beyond the headlines and we get to talk about what AI actually looks like in practice, why so many people misunderstand why it's working and where it's not. And we also get to dive into his new book, The AI Skill Flip, where he breaks down one of the biggest misconceptions about this moment, that skills are disappearing instead of transforming. Welcome to Breaking Math. I'm your host, Autumn Phaneuf, and joined with me, as always, is my illustrious co host, Noah Giansiracusa. Today's conversation is not about hype, but it's the conversation about reality.
You've been doing algorithmic trading, sort of quantitative finance since back in the 90s. Can you take us back there? What was it like? What were people doing? How was math used in finance back in the 1990s?
Well, first of all, I was quite younger back then in the 90s, so that was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was interesting. So back in the 90s, most of the trading in the stock markets was done using manual trading. So, interesting analogy between what was done manually back then and people worried about coding and software taking over their jobs because one of my first jobs was at Fidelity Investments, and I think they were doing about 10% of the trading markets. And we were just starting to introduce algo trading in there, and I went to work for a few hedge funds that did exactly that. So it was interesting because if you think about software, it's very much based around rules, right? And and we were trying to figure out, well, let's say I hold a very large position of a given stock trade. How can I sell that or buy that stock without moving the market, right? So let's say the average daily volume was 2% of the outstanding stock and I wanted to buy 3%. How can I buy that stock or sell that stock without moving the market against me? And algo trading was really the advent of that. And it was kind of fun because we were working with mostly statistical based rules process, such as TWAP, VWAP, volume weighted average, time weighted average. And there was also, it started to get a little more sophisticated in the noughties and late 90s with companies like Deutsche Bank trading. They were coming up with algo trades called a Gorilla and Sniper. Very interesting names, so you can kind of hide your trading activity. All legally, by the way, of course. And that's where I started to see the power of when we can get away from rules-based system, because it was kind of called program trading at the time, and rules-based trading, and starting to see the power of based on math and stats with code. You can give the system a little bit of autonomy into making these trades, and that also coincided with like I believe today 75% or 85% of the stock market runs either in algo trading or high frequency trading, and that was just the very start of it. But it was kind of my gateway into data science, and we were dealing with things like trade slippage and trade routing and high frequency. So it was a lot of fun and a very rich environment to learn in, by the way, because a lot of money and investment was going into algo trading and hedge fund trading at the time.
Now, you just mentioned data science. You launched the Open Data Science Conference in 2012, which has grown to one of the biggest and oldest AI conferences in the world. it has more of a professional focus than an academic
Yeah.
focus. What started that? What motivated you to do that? And tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, again, that was a lot of fun. So I was started out myself by then. I was doing consulting, also in a few startups, and I was trying to figure out how can I apply data science. And at the time, I was really interested in natural language processing, NLP, which is a precursor for ChatGPT and all the rest as well. I was trying to figure out how can I get this to work in my startup, and I was a poor, starving startup at the time. We didn't have much money. I was going to all the academic conferences like NACL and Europe's, and I was learning a ton there, but it was very blue sky. Um, and then I was also going to the more larger vendor conferences, and lots of great people there, but they want a lot of money to implement those solutions, right? So I said there must be something in between, and what I actually started was a meetup. So I went to my first meetup, and there was a guy there from a travel startup, how he was using data science and NLP to help people plan traveling back in 2011. I said, I got a warm beer, a cold slice of pizza, but I got a great talk. And I said, meetups is the way to go. So I started speaking at some meetups myself. I started the data science meetup in Boston. And then in 2012, we actually got together with a bunch of other meetup founders, like the um, Python meetup group that's still active here in Boston, and we started the Boston Data Festival. And that was a ton of fun because that was all volunteer. I think we charged $30 for our first event. It was at the Cambridge Innovation Center, Microsoft Nerd Center at MIT. And so we had people all walking all over Kendall Square. So that was first. And then from the Boston Data Festival, we grew ODSC, Open Data Science Conference, and now it's called ODSC AI, the Open Data Science and AI Conference. That's been it's been I gotta say, a remarkable journey because our goal there was to focus on the open part of that. So we wanted the open exchange of ideas. And if you remember back in 2012 and 2015, the reason why data science was so exciting because we had great um, open source platforms there, like Pandas and of course Scikit-learn, and lots of great open source tools. And from that, we also later we got TensorFlow and PyTorch, and that did so much to allow people to become data scientists. Because back in that time range, 2012 to 2015, um, it was so nice to see people showing up because I think NYU launched the first data science masters in 2012. Um, or 2013. So there was no people coming in and say, "Hey, I've got a degree in data science," because back then, data science we used to joke was stats plus code, right? that was data science. Um, so you, I met people from all walks of life. People were coming in from journalism. People were coming in from technical careers, non-technical business, and then most importantly, some incredible speakers and instructors who are way smarter and smarter. And that was kind of my secret sauce. I'm like, if I'm going to be successful, I need to be surrounded by people who are much smarter than me. And that's what open data science was. And that continues to be our ethos today. Like, give people the tools and the knowledge they need to succeed, right? And ODSC is not just a conference. We still, we're still very active in the community and meetup space. So that kind of pays the bills so we can run the meetups. We did a 250 person meetup in New York last week. I'll be doing one in London in a couple of weeks. We're doing them in Atlanta, around the country. We used to have a very strong presence around the world. I think pre-COVID, we had 80 meetup groups going on around the world. So sorry, I know it's a very long answer, but yeah, it's been a ton of fun and an excellent team there at ODC. So it's definitely not all me. I've had some great people. Have been lucky enough to find some great people to work with over the years, and it continues to be a great team.
So, in this 14-year history of this conference, you've had some amazing guests, talks, all kinds of events. You've really seen a lot of the history of AI and data science develop. Are there any specific moments, a software product coming out or a speaker or just someone you met and mingled with that really stand out, very memorable incidents?
Brian Granger, when he came up with when he invented notebooks, right? use Colab and notebooks very, very strongly. A lot of people do. And I remember him coming to the event, and I forget the name of his co-inventor or co-author, but that was a seminal moment because all of a sudden you could get not worry about your environment. It made it very easy to practice data science all of a sudden when you use code notebooks, right? That was a huge, huge deal. I remember when TensorFlow came out, that was a massive deal because we're all trying to get our head around like, what is this deep learning and how does it really work? And we still don't really know how deep learning works, but TensorFlow was a big deal. Then PyTorch after it. And then, you know, and when GANs came out, people could see straight away that these were a big deal. And then transformers came on top of that. And then of course the ChatGPT moment. So yeah, and I'm skipping a whole ton of stuff. Like when Pandas came out, was it 2012 or even earlier? That was a huge deal. And all the great work that the NumFocus people have done, by the way. In terms of speakers and people, that's a little more interesting. Yeah, so I do remember once we had a speaker who showed up with no slides, no talk prepared. I started to get over the radio, people complaining about this room, and I go there, and the speaker is basically yelling at attendees for some reason, and I won't say why. Maybe he had a few drinks or something. Anyway, I'm not going to name names, but I was the first and last speaker I had to kick out of an ODSC conference, right? The story is much more colorful than that, but I can't really say how I really went down. But basically, we had to kick a speaker out, so that was very memorable.
And just to be clear, that was not me.
just to be clear, to put this on
And
the
it was
record,
not
that
Autumn.
was not Noah.
It was not Noah. I haven't been there yet. And Sheamus, I'm surprised that we have not crossed paths yet.
Yeah.
Well, now,
No,
now
no,
the bar is set low for when
we
you
have
do.
now, we will there. And then, do you know? He's quite famous in AI. And do you know Jürgen Schmidhuber? Does that name ring a bell to you?
Just to fill our
Yes.
audience, and he's the one that seems to always claim that he invented it first. And my Twitter feed is basically all these people saying that either he did or he didn't. But this always seems to be the argument about the origination.
And I'm not going to weigh
ideas.
into that. I'm not going to weigh into that, all right? But he's very famous for inventing, at least he definitely did come up with LSTMs, and he's a very famous AI person. But sure enough, we're at ODSC London, and he gives a great talk for the first 3 minutes, and then the rest of it's all about, it's basically a rant about how he invented deep learning, right? So I'm not saying that was good or bad, but I'm just saying that was very memorable, right? Very colorful. And it's good because sometimes conferences can be a bit boring, a bit stale. And it was nice to have that debate injected in there. Another memorable moment was Yoshua Bengio, another one of these godfathers of AI. He actually came to ODSC in the very early days, and I had no idea who he was. Come on, like I'm a finance tech guy. Like why is this room filled to overflowing, right? So just because I should know stuff, I actually don't know a lot of stuff. So he was very, very memorable, very, very, yeah, amazingly humble back there, and you could, incredible person, Yoshua Bengio. Neil Lawrence is another one who stands out. He's at University of Sheffield, but he runs Europe as well. He's a huge deal. He was very memorable. And then Michael. So what's been interesting though, I'm sitting there listening to these talks. I'm thinking like, this talk is a huge deal. I don't know why it's such a big deal, but this is what they're telling me is very, very important. Case in point, Michael Wooldridge. He's a professor at Oxford, and this was actually another ODSC Europe keynote back in 2018 or 2019. Now, so I come from a finance background, and we used to use agents for trading and stuff like that, but not like agents we have today. And he started talking about multi-agent systems in computer science and in trading as one of the use cases. But he was talking about it more of a, if we use NLP and we use AI with that versus the agents I was using. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, this is coming. And here we are 4 years later. So, and actually, because I go to all these academic conferences, I was there when they presented the Transformers All You Need paper, and I was like, I have no idea what this is, but it sounds cool. Attention makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, and Peter Rabeel, UC Berkeley, and I think he just raised $100 million for a startup or something. He was talking about, he gave some great reinforcement learning workshops. And again, you could see like, it makes no sense to be training and do static training. Like reinforcement learning is where it's at. And here we are like 7 years later, RLHF and RLA, reinforcement learning for human feedback and reinforcement learning for agent feedback. And yeah, sure enough. And what it taught me was ODSC has always been a blend of academics and practitioners. So I took that academic blue sky thinking, and the practitioner said, I want to marry these together, and I want academic talks that we can start applying like now, right? So a lot of people don't know about this, about ODSC, and some people kind of wonder, well, why is it a blended mix of academics like yourself, Noah, and practitioners? I'm not saying you're not a practitioner, because you are as well. But I think I wanted a place to bring those both together, because I saw that the academic side never got enough credit, right? Because if you look at the open source ecosystem and how AI has gotten so far in this whole industry, it's based on research and open source. Like, I got to say, okay, there's other elements there, but really we owe a debt of gratitude to the research community, to the academic community, and to the open source community, because that's really what has powered the AI industry we know today, for better or for worse, I guess. The better side of AI definitely came from academia and open source.
One thing
I
I
can
find
say that with
interesting,
every process, yeah.
one thing that leaps out at me with the first part of your answer, when you're describing these kind of epical moments where something really important happened that you witnessed firsthand at the conference, is you did mention GANs, which is a technological innovation, but most
Yeah.
of your examples, I would say, like the notebooks and TensorFlow, are more democratization. They are things that
Yeah.
help not in new data science, but help many people access data science that exists. So I'm curious, is that just your personal penchant, or do you believe there's something significant about that?
Oh, no. I think I've been preaching for that, and lots of other people have the same thing, because we used to say, like, first of all, the democratization of data science and AI. Like, what do you need to become a data scientist back then? It was knowledge and access to open source tools, and you can get your knowledge anywhere. It could be Meetup, it could be YouTube, and you still see that today, right? Skills, AI skills are now so important, but you can pick them up anywhere. That's kind of number one. And I, I also do a bit of venture work, and my favorite startups I tend to want to work with are the ones who are bringing open source products to market, right? For example, Cortical was an early investor in Weaviate. Weaviate is an open source vector database, and if you're doing anything with LLMs and you need memory and storage, you store them in embeddings. So that was so important. So I think a lot of the industry has gotten behind the open source trend. So that's one. So, because open source used to be contributors for no benefit to themselves, but now it's a very good go-to-market strategy. And then think about what happened with academia, because if you think back 12 years ago, there was a lot of research going on in universities, but now we have research labs, of which the most famous are OpenAI. Remember, it had OpenGym, which is a reinforcement learning tool.
Yep.
When that was available, that was open source when OpenAI was actually open. Now it's open weight, or kind of open weight model some. But yeah, so we've seen tremendous so yeah, I think, how far has it gone? Far enough? I don't think so. But the research labs publishing research, like, look at one of my favorite research labs right now is Anthropic, right? Some of my favorite reports and favorite insights into what's going on in AI is coming out of Anthropic Labs research. So no, so I think there's a lot still to be done, but open source, open research, the open exchange of idea really has done a lot to democratize this. And when we start to talk about what I talk about my book, this AI skill shift, it's so important that that's accessible. And I think a lot of people take that for granted, because when I was in finance and doing consulting, a lot of tools were very expensive, right? They cost thousands, and not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's why I was blown away when tools like TensorFlow and PyTorch came out, because the old paradigm was to charge a lot for that. So I'm really happy that the price point for acquiring skills and using these tools has really fallen down, has really decreased. Yeah.
Now, I'm curious, you just said that you wrote a book. Tell us, why did you write it? It's called The AI Skill Flip. How do you see this fitting into the rapidly growing landscape writing on AI?
Yeah. So I guess I can go back to the reason I wrote it. And Noah, you and I actually had this conversation over a couple of years ago. But I was struggling a couple of years ago to see. So with my work at Cortical, working with startups, I got a privileged view into, what's happening next and what people are building successfully with AI. And then through ODSC, meeting all these great speakers and instructors, and they're working with AI. But a couple of years ago, if you remember back then in 2023, AI was spitting out some great stuff. It would write an email for you and all that stuff, but there was a lot of hallucinations, a lot of problems. And I was really struggling to get people to get it to work, including myself, because I was actually I'm head of AI for Cortical, so I was building out my own workflows. And we were using Naive RAG at the time, first LLMs. It was hard to get it to work. And then at the same time, I'm talking to all these brilliant people. I'm like, show me where AI is working for you. And it was kind of working, but 80% of the time was filling a lot. So that was concerning to me. But meanwhile, people were like, AI is going to end the world, right? I'm like, I can't even get this thing to write a good email or write some good code. And people are talking about ending the world. So I was hearing a lot of doomerism around AI, number one. And number two, I was struggling to get successful use cases. And then the third thing, I was going to these meetups, and the meetups were half technical, half non-technical. Remember, I was down in Dallas, Atlanta. This is late 2023, early 2024, and people were like coming up to me. There were software engineers were coming up to me and like, Seamus, I'm hearing I'm going to be out of a job, and AI is getting better and better, and they were correct on that. But what do you think as a software engineer? Will AI take my job? And what do I do about that? What kind of skills do I learn? Right. And then I was getting data scientists coming up to me asking the same question. I'm like, wait, you're a data scientist. You're so deep in this. Like, how are you concerned about this? Like, you know how this stuff works. Like, you know what it's good at and what it's not good at. So um so I was hearing a lot of hype that AI is great. It's gonna, we can all just tax the robots and sit on the beach and we'll get universal income. I was hearing AI is going to end the world. And meanwhile, I'm trying to figure out what's working here. So what I wanted to do was write a book to answer those questions for, number one, myself, because I interviewed a bunch of people for that book, had a ton of conversations. So I want to answer those questions for myself, first and foremost, so I could better answer the questions people were asking me. And then I want to write something so I could disseminate those answers to a wider audience. So that's the kind of big room. Like, number one, that like there's definitely grains of truth to the doom and the hype. There's grains of truth in that, but in some respects, both were wrong. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of like, I had a lot of questions myself. I didn't have all the answers, so that's what motivated me to write the book. And where I kind of think it fits in is, to answer your original question, where I think it fits in is like, it's not a novel. I didn't write it to read end to end. I tried to make each paragraph kind of independent of the other, but first of all, to think about why is this doom narrative and why are all the jobs being replaced? Why is that such a strong story? And I don't think I put this in the book, but think about what's a unique characteristic of rowing a boat. So if you think about rowing a boat, you're in a rowboat, not a scull, but a rowboat, right? The unique characteristic about that is you're going forward, but while you're looking back, right? And a lot of our experience, and this great experience, we're always looking back. When we think about the future, we always extrapolate the past onto the future. And I met these people with great new job titles, great careers, and people are always thinking about, well, my job's going to go away or that my job's going to disappear. They're never thinking about, number one, what are the new roles coming? I interviewed a bunch of people with new roles in the book. And number two is like, it's really hard to think about how my job is going to change because you don't know what is going to change. So I'm trying to answer those questions. So focus, and that's why I call it the skill flip, because really what I learned from writing that whole book, and yes, picking a title for a book is super hard because all the good ones were taken. So I settled on the skill flip because what I see is like some skills are being emphasized more and some are being emphasized less. So no skill is necessarily going away, but some are increasing and some are decreasing. So I don't buy into the whole de-skilling and all that stuff. So it's the skill flip is really about what skills do we need now? Do we need to increase and what ones are going less? So you think about the software engineer. I do software engineering. I'm coding a lot less, but I'm applying judgment and observation and evaluation to the code output a lot more.
One thing that really struck me reading your book, and first of all, I want to very highly recommend it. I would say there are a lot of AI books on the market nowadays. That's kind of what Autumn was hinting at, I think, is we're sort of flooded. Some of them written entirely by AI, but let's not even go there. But what stood out to me is it really was clear that you took a bird's eye view of saying, look, I've been involved in data AI algorithms for, let's say, 30 years. I've been involved in this conference for 15 years. You've really seen the landscape, how it's changed. And I think that's what gives you this rowboat perspective that even if you are looking backwards, if you look backwards every year for 20 years, eventually you are going to be able to predict what's 1 mile ahead of us. But
Yeah.
it wasn't a book that just stays in the clouds. I think it was inspired by what you learned from the conference, but it really struck me as surprising, and I mean this honestly, I was not expecting this, very kind of personal and almost intimate, where I thought you would kind of, say, here's how to do prompt engineering, and here's how to do this, and here's how to do that. But it really was very personal. You were on the ground talking to people who are working at small companies and big companies, learning their stories, sharing their insights. I really found it very human, and I found that very refreshing in a world that's, increasingly AI. So, can you tell us a bit more about that? Like, how did you find the people whose stories you shared, and what really made a story stand out to you to say, this is something I want to include in the book?
Yeah, well, honestly, if you read the book, I'm a big Michael Lewis fan. He wrote the Crash and a bunch of stuff like that, and I love his narrative style. And I had this elevated idea. I was going to write like Michael Lewis. So, but if obviously I didn't, I'm
We've all
probably like
tried, we've
Michael
all
Lewis
failed.
no style. Yeah, yeah. But I love his narration, number one. So that was kind of the inspiration to it, and it goes back to what I said earlier. Like I was looking for positive cases, because remember back Autumn and Noah, like it was really hard to find positive cases around AI. Like there was a lot of hype and it's coding and all this stuff, but as a practitioner when you're using it, it was really hard to find out where AI is it's being applied successfully. And don't get me wrong, it was being applied, but for practitioners like myself, it was painful and it was nowhere near as successful as people were claiming to be. So the big deal I had to go, I'm like, okay, well, who's using AI successfully and where are they finding success with it? Number one. Number two, step outside my own AI bubble, right? Step outside my bubble because I'm in an AI bubble. And so I started asking around, like, do you know anyone in law? Do you know anyone in finance? Do you know anyone in marketing? Do you know anyone in construction? I don't care. If they're using AI, I don't care how they're using it, I want to talk to them. So excuse me, one of my favorite was um just so I get the name correct. Yeah, one of my favorite was definitely Anna Akovic. She was introduced to me by Cal, who was our occasional podcast, and she had this amazing title. It was Head of AI Experience, right? What is Head of AI Experience? What is even that job? Like, I hear that job title, I'm like, I want that job. And she explained to me. So I interviewed her for my book, had a call with her, and it's kind of weird when you call up someone, hey, I wanted to use my book. You've done that, Noah, right? It's like sometimes people are like, what? Who's this guy? What is that to me? So anyway, I eventually got a call with her, and I'm like, Anna, what is this head of experience? She's like Sheamus, we're if I get this correct, we're a mid-sized Midwestern construction company, and we've got about a couple hundred people in our office, and the company want to roll out everyone to AI. And you can't just roll out ChatGPT or whatever model that we're using to everybody and just say, hey, go at it, right? You have to have governance and policy and all that stuff around there. But when you start to apply governance and policy, that's kind of like, we're giving you a tool, but we're putting guardrails on it. And how are people using it? So they really wanted to be successful with AI. So they appointed somebody and came up with this great title, Head of AI Experience. And she had one-on-ones with like over 150 people. And she didn't approach it like, hey, you're going to use AI now, or this is it, and you got to be using AI. She's like, okay, here's you have this AI tool now. What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? And how can I help you be more successful with AI, right? So awesome story. And hope she comes to ODSC East and you can meet her in person, by the way. Um, really wonderful. And so thankful for her time. And then another person I met was Ashley Bilodeau. Now, Ashley lives in San Francisco, the heart of the AI boom, right? And I love Ashley because she gave me so much great insight. And her title was Go-to Market AI Engineer, right? So if you know a little bit about marketing, go-to market is kind of like a Silicon Valley kind of, get your product to market. And an AI engineer is like a hot new job role last couple of years. But I'd never heard that. Like, what is a go-to market AI engineer, right? And she actually works at a very large, huge tech firm. And her job is to work with all the go-to market people, and there are hundreds at this firm, and do the engineering, like what tools, what my stack look like, where am I finding success, where it's working, where it's not working. And that's why I want to humanize it, because let's face it, at the end of the day, with AI and thanks to AI, anybody can write anything, right? But and I wanted to have something unique to say. And in order to have something unique to say, I had to find unique people to talk to and interview in order to say something unique. And then I also talked to Dr. Regina Barzilai. She was a keynote at ODSC. She's a very big deal at MIT. She actually was diagnosed with breast cancer, wasn't happy with the treatment she was receiving. She created all these open source tools that are used by hospitals around the world, not so much in the US because of, I don't know, FEC or something like that, to do early detection of breast cancer, a huge, huge deal. I met Matt Harrison, who's one of the top Python instructors in the world. And instead of seeing AI as a threat, he used it to build out all these new applications around learning. He was doing it. Here's a good one. I met actually I was friends with this Dr. Ryan McTaggart. He's a radiologist, and I'll tell you a funny story. I'm not afraid to call out Jeffrey Hilton. So Jeffrey Hilton, back in 2016 at a conference in Toronto, famously said, "Remember, deep learning was so good back then." He's like, famously said, "You know what? Deep learning is so good at studying X-rays. Forget about training radiologists. We do not need any more radiologists. AI is so good at it. And if you're a radiologist, go find another profession." And guess what? Because I researched it for my book and I mentioned my book. Since 2016, the pay for radiologists have doubled. And there's 2 to 3 times more radiologists in the world because of, not because of AI, but there are actually 2 to 3 more. So that actually didn't come true. And there's lots of reasons for that. But again, it's Jevons paradox. When you make something more accessible, then it becomes more available. And I talked to Dr. McTaggart, and he's like, yeah, he says, I'm able to look at a vast amount of more X-rays because of these new tools than I was before, right? So the opposite is true. And by the way, I hugely respect Jeffrey Hilton, but he's still telling people because of AI, you should look at fields like plumbing. So I don't know what's going on with him, but just goes to show you, people, like, you should never listen to experts, including myself, because when we make predictions, we're generally wrong. So he's out there telling people to go to plumbers. And actually, I mentioned in my book about someone who became an electrician because they were worried about AI. Now they're back working in IT. So anyway, I could go on about those stories. So yeah, that was I think I talked to you about, I was really scared to write a book about the time commitment. But once I started talking to people and interviewing people and having so much fun with it, I'm like, that was, yeah, so lucky to talk to some great people. And I'm only scratching the surface here. I think I interviewed about 50 people for that book, and I mentioned about 30 in it.
It changes your perspective a lot.
Yeah.
Now, you've seen a lot of AI history firsthand. Now, I'm curious, what is one final piece that you would like to have listeners take away from this?
Yeah. I would say don't try and learn everything, right? Because you see people like, people either, they've heard about AI and they're ignoring it, or they've tried it and said, oh yeah, I tried Lovable and these Vibe apps, they don't kind of work, so I'm not going to worry about it. Or they're like trying a bunch of things. One is, don't try and learn everything. Learn at your own pace, because another thing, I wrote a whole chapter about this in the book, and that is the pace of change, right? We always think things have never moved so fast, but that story has been repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated over technology history, right? And your advantage is that people never move at the speed of technological change, right? Think about when when electricity came in, it took decades before factories were rewired to take advantage of electricity. It was same with the horse and carriage in cars, even with the dot-com era, right? Dot-com era, a lot of those dot-coms went bust because we weren't ready for, they were all right, just at the wrong time. So the technology will always move faster than our ability to absorb it, right? So don't try and go at that pace. Go at your own pace, and try and, as Nate Silver says, discern the signal from the noise. So just, if you're not using AI right now, look at increasing your AI literacy is step one. Then do prompting. Then start to use tools, and then start to think of AI not as a tool, but more of a, I know some people don't like this word, but teammate. But there's a journey there, and do the journey at your own pace. But do get started in that journey.
There's one thing this conversation makes clear. AI is not a story about replacement. It's a story about rebalancing. The tools are getting faster and the systems are getting more powerful. But the real question isn't what AI can do. It's how humans choose to work with it. And as Seamus puts it, this isn't about learning everything overnight. It's about learning just enough to start. Because the people who thrive in this next chapter won't be the ones who chase every single new tool. They'll be the ones who understand how to apply judgment, context, and curiosity in a world increasingly shaped by machines. The thing is, the future of AI will be shaped by the ones who are willing to engage with it. And that's thoughtfully, critically, and at their own pace. So until next time, stay curious and stay informed to the world around you.